our differentiation when we look at the media landscape broadly, sports and non-sports, is really about being this global leader in what we call real-life entertainment. And in that, while there are a lot of great media companies out there doing a lot of big scripted content, our focus is frankly fundamentally different, and our approach to this is fundamentally different. We are all about passionate communities of fans, whether those fans be in areas like science and adventure and survival or food or travel, or frankly whether they be around cycling, tennis, winter sports, or other disciplines. And so for us, our approach to sports and Eurosport is one where we believe in the power of these passionate communities. We believe in the power of being able to build fan bases around these passionate communities, and growing that fan base well beyond even just the pure video consumption of the events, but around the lifestyle and everything else that comes with the sport. And so when we looked at this positioning several years ago, for us, the Olympics was something that we thought fit squarely in that. It is, frankly, an event that not only being the biggest global sports event in the world, it's also the biggest human event, because it's not just great sports stories, it's also great human stories. And when you think about the power of Eurosport and the power of Discovery, that is exactly the blend that we have, which is we tell stories about the human spirit, the human achievement, human efforts all year long across all of our networks. And the Olympics was an opportunity to partner with this incredible global franchise, bring the stories of not just great sports achievement, but great human achievement to more people across more screens than ever before.
Our biggest learnings were a couple things. One is, in order to get that more reach, more screens, more people, you really have to be ubiquitous. And so it's not about one platform or one model versus another, free versus pay versus OTT, but truly having the content available in different models, but to everybody on every platform. Because some of the younger generations obviously are less keen to watch it on traditional television. And so we were on Snap and on Facebook and other social and digital platforms, and every minute live, obviously on the Eurosport player. But at the same time, by far still the biggest way that people consume the content, because it's sports, it's big events, it's live, it's still a family and an event that people like to watch together, was by far the traditional television, even if digital continues to get bigger, digital and social continue to get bigger and bigger. So number one was ubiquitous distribution to try and get the broadest reach. The second is obviously being on the platforms that people want to watch this on, and so we were very keen to make sure we were across all the different platforms that made sense. And the third was trying to make sure that in the storytelling we found not just great new technologies and innovative ways to do things, but that were relevant to the storytelling. And so utilizing what we called the Eurosport Cube, which was the first sort of AR studio ever, that ultimately allowed analysts to bring out some of the details of how a skier might have won one race versus another, doing things like sports explainers, which before the games we published broadly that told people exactly what are the rules of curling, or what are the rules of skeleton or bobsled, so that when they actually watched the events, it was relevant to them and they could understand it. And so it was those two or three things that really sort of differentiated the Olympics for us.
There is no bigger global event than the Olympics. This is bigger than anything by far that we've done.
For second, now she starts to charge.
We have 10,000 media that will be there for the Olympics.
Double cork 1260, aka the Tomahawk.
It's 17 days of 15 sports across the 13 venues.
Discovery is doing many things that have not been done before in the coverage of the Olympic Games.
48 markets that we're going to be broadcasting across in 20 plus languages is something that I don't think any of the teams have done.
This technology and what Eurosport has been able to put together is definitely ahead of everybody else.
I was crippled with excitement.
More Olympic sport to more people on more screens. And that's the most important part.
We've delivered an incredible Olympic experience. The sky's the limits now for us.
We are building the foundation for many Olympics to come.
I can't wait for Discovery to make history. It's going to be fantastic.
It's a fresh TV. There are fresh programs with great commentators, with great shows. Congratulations, Eurosport.
It's a big piece of the business. You know, we've said that the majority of the economics for the rights that we paid for back 2.5 years ago, or we secured, come from sub-licensing revenue, and so that is a big piece of it. On the economic side, you know, it's the majority of the economics of how we monetize the games over this 8-year period, number one. And number two, it's obviously, to the conversation we were just having, it's critical also for the reach and being able to touch viewers. And rather than looking at it as us competing with them, frankly, our real interest is seeing all boats rise. So having the free-to-air be great, obviously that's a big, big funnel and going to always generally have the biggest audience. But having the complement of a different type of coverage on pay TV, which was what we brought with Eurosport, and then having the only place so you could get everything live, every event, all the time, and any time was on the Eurosport player. And so that sort of complementary basket of different distribution outlets was key to the reach as well as the economics.
For the United States of America into gold medal position.
Generally, people, if you can give them an official outlet for the great content and the great stories, most people want to get it from those sources. But if you don't, then people end up going to other outlets, piracy, you know, etc. And so it's really important in this age of people having a lot of places that they can find content to make it available, make it easy to find, simple and frictionless. And so for us, partnering with the likes of Snap, Facebook, and others was key because we wanted to tap into those platforms, because we do know that, you know, some segments of the population are living more exclusively on those platforms than they may be on some traditional television platforms. And so that was key to the reach and key certainly to bring the games to a younger demographic and a younger viewer base.
This is sort of the where we ended up. So 352 million unique viewers across the European footprint. As I said, the general population across the 48 markets that we cover is about 700 million people. And you can see that almost 2/3 of the entire population watched the Olympics at some point in time on some device across some screen. And that is a huge number. And we're not surprised, remembering obviously this is the Winter Games, it's not summer. So the relative interest of the games, particularly obviously more in Northern European markets versus the Southern European markets. You know, there's a whole portion of the population that obviously is less engaged necessarily by geography in the winter. And nonetheless, we got almost 2/3 of the population to engage with the games. Huge amounts of video views, over 4.5 billion. And a lot of that coming through traditional television. And a few stats that I think are interesting that we'll come to in a second in terms of the whys, but a lot of this viewership, while there is so much talk about digital, and digital has clearly been a key additional way to get audience and certainly younger audience, the reality is still the primary driver and the king still in terms of delivering of this audience is still traditional television. You see the engagement in terms of the population, both in terms of people who engage by watching it as well as who engage by on social, on digital. We had audiences shares, particularly in the markets where we were delivering, in places like Norway and Sweden, that I didn't, in my 20 years of television, have never even thought was possible, where we had literally 90% audience shares watching events. So we had almost, every single person in Norway and or Sweden at different times watching the Olympics. We're not sure what the 10% that weren't watching were actually doing, but and so it was a record audiences for us across several markets, particularly where we were multi-platform broadcasters. And then the engagement. What we did is we had partnerships with Snapchat, we had partnerships with Facebook, we streamed the opening ceremonies live in a couple markets with Facebook, one of the big targets that when we signed up with President Bach and the Olympic team 2.5 years ago was trying to make sure over the next 8 years that we worked to make the Olympics relevant, not just to the older generations, but to a new and younger generation. And so making this available through the platforms where that younger demo is engaging was critical for us to try and bring in a new set of viewers and a new set of people into the Olympic family.